Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on carbon capture and ESG, the future of clean energy. I'm Swapnil from Edvantage team, and it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for today's session, Dr. Nitesh Kumar. Dr. Nitesh Kumar is a seasoned ESG and sustainability expert with over 20 years of hands-on experience in well engineering and drilling technology. He holds a PhD and MS in petroleum engineering from Texas Tech University, USA, and MTech in applied geophysics from IIT Roorkee. He is the owner of MDNK Oil and Gas Consultant and formerly served as a professor and head of the petroleum engineering at DIT University. Dr. Kumar has also worked as a subject matter expert for ESG at Petronas in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where he contributed to major sustainability and carbon management initiatives in the upstream energy sector. During today's webinar, Dr. Nitesh will walk us through the critical role of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, that is CCUS, in achieving net zero goals. He will also explore the growing importance of ESG in shaping investment decisions and how industries worldwide are adapting to this clean energy shift. Get ready to gain the actionable insight, understand the technological and regulatory landscapes, and see how you can play a part in the clean energy transition. Without further ado, I invite Dr. Nitesh Kumar to take over and begin the session. Thank you, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Swapnil. Am I audible, guys?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay, very nice. So that was the very kind introduction you made, Swapnil. Just um a little, I would say, correction. I was subject matter expert for Petronas and well engineering, and ESG is kind of embedded in the processes and work we do in industry. So, without wasting much time, I think we can straight away jump to the discussion today. And I appreciate those who are here. And thanks again to Edvantage for this opportunity. So, okay, so there are two things. One is ESG, another is CCUS. So, what is ESG? It's environment, social, society, and governance. So we will look at ESG and we'll also look at CCUS and together how they make an impact to the industry. So, and what is CCUS? CCUS is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So, having said that, I will just go quickly about a little bit about the history of ESG. So, a society is as good as its moral principles, right? So, what does morality mean? You know, you should be supporting um, technologies, industry, or anything on earth which really supports the society itself, which supports the environment, and which is useful in governing. So, who is governing? The state would govern, and the state's job is to govern, but it also shares that responsibility with the industry, right? So, that governance, that is also part of ESG. So, for example, these socially responsible investment practices, they started way back in 60s, right? So there was this United Methodist ministers, two of them, way back in 1971. They were opposed to the Vietnam War, yeah? So they launched a tax fund, and this fund was really environmental and socially aware in fund, in the sense that the decision making were all done based on social and environmental factors, and criteria were set for that. So this is still in existence, by the way, guys. by the name Impacts Asset Management, or the Sustainable Allocation Fund. So, what this fund does is it allocates money to the companies, in their stocks, only after making an assessment of their environmental and social, um, performance. So that's a new way of investing. It's not just about profit, it's about society, it's about environment, and being socially responsible. Now, way back in 80s, again, there was a lot of talk about the apartheid system, where a few white people would really rule over the majority black, and the system was such that it was not fair to the majority of the people. So there were fund managers who started pushing to divest holdings in tobacco and South African, industries, which were, which were not really very friendly to this social concept of apartheid. And many of these institutions included public health organizations, universities, pension funds, etc. So that is one way by which you can say that, hey, listen, if you want my money invested in your country or in your industry, you will have to be socially responsible, environmentally responsible. You will have to follow governance principle in a country. So there are other examples, this KLD Research and Analytics, they came up with the Domino 400 social index. And that was just to ensure that the investor gets a feel of what kind of investments companies are doing, and they can prioritize their social and environmental responsibility. So these things do matter in the long run. So I won't go back to the 60s and 70s. You guys can go and look at the literature available. But what I am saying here is way back in, just 4 year ago, 5 year ago in 2020. So the World Economic Forum and the four big accounting firms, they released a standardized set of stakeholder capitalism metrics. So what this did, this made the investment funds manager, um, they were able to do ESG reporting through this and consistent way to compare. So this kind of standardized stakeholder capitalism really helped the investment environment, as well as uh, the companies uh, were more aware about their accounting principles and how they have to maintain ESG reporting, yeah, so that they can be assessed properly by the stakeholders. Then in 21, the European Union came up with the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulations. And this required all those companies, financial services and investment firms to look into this before they are making investments. Then in the United States in 2022, the SEC came up with a similar proposal, and that said that ESG criteria must be used for uh, you know uh, for investment, as well as social reporting, as well as environmental reporting. So all this was to ensure that companies become responsible. So European Union's Corporate Sustainability Report Directive in 2023, almost 50,000 companies had to file annual reports after this directive came into effect. And it kind of gives a flair to the business risks and opportunities related to ESG, and how it impacts the people and the environment. So that was a good step. And again in 2024, they came up with Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. So what it says is starting in 2027, companies that operate in the European Union will be required to identify and act on adverse human rights. So guys, this is all about social factor, ESG, human rights, yeah, and environmental impacts. So business is not just about making money in today's environment, guys. The point I'm trying to make to you is that business is has to be more ESG friendly today. Okay, so when we talk about ESG, what are the factors on for which are taken into consideration by all these, European Union and security SEC of the US and all. So the regulators are really looking at, companies' contribution to environment, social, and governance. So what would environment include? Climate change and greenhouse gas. Are you one of the polluters? Are you polluting the environment? What kind of energy efficient systems do you have? you know Water, which is such a clean resource. Water is very essential for any economy, for any civilization. What are you doing about it? How are you using it? Are you polluting it? How much water you use? Likewise, hazardous waste. What do you do with the waste? Are you processing it? You just throwing it in the land, water, or air, burning stubble? Like here in India, we have that kind of problem. Air and water pollution, deforestation. Is it that because you have to run an industry, you have to deforest all the forest? Yeah. Likewise, in social, what you do in social, like we just discussed, human rights was a big thing. Slavery, child labor, is it a big concern there? Just because you are operating, are you promoting slavery and child labor? So the companies have to be responsible. And if they are doing this kind of thing, then many big funds, pension funds, may not invest there. Local and indigenous communities, how are you resolving conflict? What do you do about health and safety of your citizens and your own workers? Employee relations and diversity. So in India, we have social corporate responsibility. There, you have to invest, the company would invest 3 to 4% or whatever it is required in environment, you know, for social reasons and to improve governance. So, how much is the executive of the company, the top managers being paid? Is there a big disparity? Yeah, bribery and corruption. That's also important these days. To grow, you must be straightforward. Why? Because it's not just Indians investing in India. It's not just, that Reliance and Tatas are the only investors. Today, we have Tesla coming in. We have many countries, where bribery and corruption are barred. So they will not, their investment cannot be made in India just because India is ranking high on corruption index. India, for that reason, any country, any third world country or any country where you have corruption. Data protection is very important. Yeah, what kind of laws you have in your company, board independence, diversity structure, tax strategy. Yeah, are you one of the highest taxing states, or what kind of tax benefits do you provide as a corporation to your employees? Transparency again goes back to bribery and corruption, and shareholder rights. So these things are important in terms of ESG. And then ESG is related to sustainability. So the moment I am going towards sustainability, guys, my goal is to walk you through um, uh, things like CCUS actually, because what we are trying to do is to create a world which is sustainable. So what we mean by sustainable, it is something which I can use for myself and maybe 10 generations behind me. my kids and kids and kids, when they come up, they also get fresh water, fresh air, and you know that that good environment which I'm used to. It shouldn't be that my future generations are in a gas tank and in a very unfriendly environment. So that's what sustainability means, and the concept of sustainability is related to ESG. Yeah, but they are definitely distinct concepts. You know what ESG is, and sustainability encompasses a broad framework for responsible business practices. Yeah, so it's a broad framework for responsible business practices that consider environmental, social, and economic impacts, aiming for long term viability. Long term. So, 10 generations from now should be able to enjoy the same fresh air, fresh water as I do now. Mm. So ESG is more specific set of criteria used to assess and measure a company's performance, right? So we know that ESG reporting is a requirement, but when the moment we say sustainability, yeah, then we are saying that ESG reporting and evaluation framework uh, helps measure progress towards that goal. So this is how they are related. That reporting and evaluation framework for ESG that helps towards the progress and that goal of sustainability. So now what the United Nations did, they came up with what they call 17 sustainable development goals. And these goals were declared in 2015 in Paris, and their aim was to achieve a just and sustainable world by 2030. Now, these goals cover a wide range of issues, including poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, climate action. So, you have to remove poverty, hunger. Everybody should go to sleep with food in his stomach, right? Good health, good education, gender equality, yeah. Climate action. What can you do for climate action? So that's where CCUS comes in, guys. I will take you there very soon. So you can see all these goals, like in for environment, it says clean water and sanitation. That's a goal. That's a SDG 17 goal, one of the 17 goals of Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations. Likewise, uh, you have quality education. Yeah, so that's a social goal. And then in governance, you want to make sustainable cities and communities. So all these smart cities which are coming up, that would be part of governance, right? So is the industry helping in the SDG goals? That is where they would be assessed against by the investment managers. Now, let's come to CCUS, guys. So we know what ESG is. Now, CCUS is a set of technologies. And what does CCUS stands for? It says carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So it's a set of technologies which are gaining recognition as a crucial tool for achieving net zero emissions and enhancing ESG performance. So there is a goal of net zero emission, and then we have to enhance ESG performance. So how would you do that? You use CCUS technologies, right? So CCUS helps businesses reduce their carbon footprint. More the carbon, more is the pollution, environmental damage, and so you really need to ensure that the carbon footprint is reduced. So this is a key aspect of ESG. By capturing and either storing or utilizing CO2 emissions that would otherwise be released into the atmosphere. So you don't want to release that carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. You want to capture it, pump it in such a way that it is in a liquid form, maybe, and pump it down the reservoir so it stays there for 100, 500 years and it doesn't release, and thus it's not released to the atmosphere. Or you can use in enhanced oil recovery, we'll discuss that, right? or you can make some fertilizers of that carbon, plastics, somehow use it in a way that it doesn't escape to the atmosphere. Okay, that said, what are we going to what are we going to make out of ESG and climate change? So again, ESG and climate change are related, guys. ESG frameworks prioritize environmental sustainability. We have seen that, right? Climate change mitigation, which is major area of focus for businesses today. So, a business is something where you can make profit. So if we are saying that there can be money, there can be profit if you can go environmentally sustainable, and the government is giving you some benefits out of it, then that can work out, right? For example, in India, we have so many solar panels, solar voltaic cells, and solar systems being placed in large deserts, in large water areas as well. And then you have wind power. So the government is trying to support these environmentally sustainable technologies. And so ESG frameworks really prioritize environmental sustainability, right? Now when we come to CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage, that directly addresses climate change, guys. Wow, how? When you are capturing that carbon dioxide and you are storing it or sequestrating that CO2 below the sea level, are you not reducing the greenhouse gas emissions? You are, right? And this, once you reduce the greenhouse emissions, you are really working on the environmental part of the ESG performance. So CCUS is very important for that reason. And by implementing CCUS, companies can demonstrate their commitment to environmental responsibility. So they can get some kind of credits, ESG credits, they get carbon credits, and that is tradable as well now with the new carbon system coming in India. So, so how are you going to measure ESG performance along with CCUS, right? So CCUS projects can be included in ESG reporting to demonstrate the company's commitment. So if a company is trying to capture CO2 and it is investing money in, you know, putting that CO2 downhole, maybe 5,000 feet below the mud line, it's spending money, right? So that kind of investment can be reflected in your ESG reporting. And once you do that, so you have really tried to take care of carbon footprint for Mother Nature, for the entire humanity. And so that meets sustainability goals. And the ESG reporting frameworks, yeah, there is one such GRI reporting framework, and then there is Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, SASB, then the Domino one, which we discussed earlier. So these, they provide guidance on how to measure and disclose ESG performance. And this can be included in the CCUS projects. Now, if you have a very high level of ESG performance, guys, there may be pension funds who would come to your company and say, well, we are really interested in the business you are doing. And so we want to, invest in your stocks, in your company, because you are thinking good about the nature. So, and then because they would invest in such a ESG reporting framework led company, the European Union or the Securities Exchange Commission in the US is going to reward them. So that's how the business is working these days, guys. Investors and other stakeholders are increasingly demanding transparency and accountability in ESG reporting, right? I give you one example. Adani, you must have heard about this company, Adani Green, which made billions of dollars in Karnataka and other few states. And it somehow was reported that the company gave bribes to the ministers in Karnataka and wherever. And because of that, the US put a strong case during Biden's time. And then what happened? You know, what happened? The stock market value of Adani fell like a piece of rock, and it was almost half. The net worth was almost half. It's again picked up, but that's why it's the market. But that's the kind of influence investors and stakeholders have today. Yeah. If you are not transparent, you're not accountable in ESG reporting. So, climate change. Are you affected by climate change? I guess everybody here is affected. Why? Because there's a rising carbon footprint, which is leading to climate change. You're getting huge typhoons, you're having desertification. Yeah, you have huge lines of cars in New Delhi and many cities now, burgeoning cities, because of which the air is getting polluted. And you are having asthma and all kinds of diseases because of that. And then what is happening when the ambient temperature goes up? In on the poles or on the Himalayan tops or the mountain tops, you have huge um, uh, these ice caps which are melting. The glaciers are melting, and the sea levels are rising, and flooding and all kinds of shit is happening. So climate change does impact all of us. And here is some data. United States was the biggest emitting carbon dioxide emitting country. This is as per the 2023 Union of Concerned Scientists report. So, and then comes China, and then Russia, and India is there. But India is just giving 3.4% to the whole megatons of CO2. But still, the people are more affected in India than in the United States. You know why? Because um, they are the emitter from fossil fuels and cement or whatnot. You know, in India, they get directly impacted by it, because people get into health hazards. The temperature is such, the environment is such that the impact can be seen on the human beings directly. Whereas maybe because of the weather conditions, or maybe because the pollution is happening away from the cities, away from the places where people are residing, that the impact is really limited. So, that said, what do governments do in order to control carbon footprint? They have what you call NDC, a nationally determined contribution. Nobody is forcing you to have a NDC declaration, but you declare it on your own. And India declared in the COP, 26. This was held. This is a UN climate change conference, which was held in 2021, and what we said was that we will achieve net zero by 2070. Net zero means you are producing only that much of CO2 or carbon monoxide that you are taking away from the atmosphere. Then there were other goals that you're going to have the share of its electricity from renewable sources up to 50%. You're going to achieve 500 gigawatt of fossil fuel free generating capacity by 2030. And there is one important thing for India, guys, here, that the fuel which we use, like the coal, in India, we have almost 10% of the entire Earth's coal content. So we cannot overlook that. We must be using our energy resources effectively. We can't just uh, stop burning coal because it pollutes environment. So what we did was we put that coal to use, be it in power sector or energy sector, wherever. But we also say that we will implement net zero by 2070. So we will take away that carbon. Somehow we will capture that carbon footprint and put it below sea level or do whatever it takes to get rid of that CO2. All right. So here is a power plant, and there are thermal power plants which utilize fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas to generate electricity. And when you burn all this fossil fuels, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, NOx, and other particulate matter are released. And CO2 emissions, they constitute a significant portion of the greenhouse gas emissions, guys. So all these gases are called GHG, greenhouse gases, right? Contributing to climate change and its impacts such as rising temperature, altered participation in rainfall patterns, and sea level rise. So, and what would CCS do? They will capture this CO2 from power plants and store them underground or use them for UR, plastics, whatnot, right? So we just discussed about net zero, guys. We have all heard of the term net zero. So what it means refers to a balance between the amount of greenhouse gases that would be released or produced and the amount that's removed from the atmosphere. So you're balancing it. You just produce as much as you are able to release. That's another way of looking at it, right? It can be achieved through a combination of emission reduction and emission removal. If you are removing more CO2 than what you are producing, you are a good state. You are eventually going to have a situation when there would be no CO2 or it would be very less. But if you are a state which is producing more carbon dioxide than what you are removing, eventually your citizens, the society is going to suffer. So, what are those conventions which were important for, climate change? So, CCUS, or for that reason, ESG, there is a chain of events which led to the formation of such technologies, such policies, such frameworks, which can improve the environment, the society, and governance, right? So the first one amongst them was the Kyoto Protocol way back in 1997, where the countries agreed that they will start working on something called clean drive mechanism, CDM. India participates, and so are many other countries. And it's a way by which the rich countries, the Western world, they compensate those companies or organizations which are working to, reduce the carbon footprint in India. So that's a very good thing, compensation for doing a good job. CLSF initiative of 2003. This is something which are people, there's an institute called TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute in New Delhi. And its first I would say the promoter or the person who set it up, Dr. R.K. Pachori, he was the key founding member of the CLSF initiative, where it was a US based initiative and India contributed big time. And we decided to have strategies for sequestration and ways to use carbon storage to get rid of carbon footprint. So US EPA is the next EPA on reducing GHG emissions. There was a policy framework by the United States Environment Protection Agency. and that was very effective in the United States. Then you have the SDG goals 2015 during Paris Agreement and the convention itself, where the net zero concept came into existence. Then you have IPCC, a special report on global warming. So it kind of forced nations and politicians to think about global warming, even though there are countries, influential countries, who do not really want to get dragged into global warming discussion. Then there is IEA report, which clearly says that the seekers in clean energy transitions would be very useful. And then you have Conference of Parties, COP21, 2021, or labeled COP26, where India made their declaration on net zero goals. So what does this IEA report say on CCUS? It says that CCUS is the only group of technologies that contribute, that contributes both to reducing emission in key sectors directly and to remove carbon dioxide to balance emissions that are challenging to avoid a critical part of net zero goals. So net zero goals and how to balance that. That's all about CCUS, right? Years of slow progress, new investment in incentives, and strengthening climate goals, working for CCUS. Now, India is a big market for CCUS, and there is a significant amount of activity going on. There's a professor in IIT Bombay, Professor Vikram Vishal, I think. He has been working on this technology and trying to look at opportunities. And there are many, many companies, organizations which have really started working in India, and their goal is to strengthen seekers operations in India. So IEA report highlights the central role that carbon removal technologies will need to play, a central role in meeting ambitious carbon climate targets. So nations have agreed to reduce carbon footprint, and to do that, CCUS would be a major technology. Okay. So again, what is CCUS? C for carbon, okay, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. Capture, how are you going to capture? There are different means and ways to capture. You have different filters, you separate them, and you pass through filters and then you capture them. Or you have a direct air capture kind of thing, which would be very useful in India or in developing countries where the atmosphere is having a lot of high carbon content, right? Utilization, how are you going to utilize? You can convert that carbon into plastics. You can use it for enhanced oil recovery. You can make fertilizers. You can do a lot of things with that carbon. Yeah, and then storage. Storage is a concept. Like I said, you can store it underground. Yeah, maybe thousands of feet below mudline. So there are already projects which are successful in CO2 sequestration, like in Norway, yeah, and the UK. They are working on it. So coming to the policy initiative, what initiatives are required to implement CCUS in India, or for that reason, in any developing country? So the key challenge here is to reduce the cost of the mechanism to implement technologies like DAC. Why I say DAC, direct air capture? Because in New Delhi, every year the court will give a certain amount of decisions, directions. The public at large is bothered because the carbon footprint is so large that it becomes a big health hazard, and that's why we have no other choice but to bring in the Supreme Court of India and the government machinery to tackle it. But it's every year thing, and solutions are not there. Why? Because the solution, the cost of the mechanism to implement these technologies would be very, very expensive. The government may offer incentives such as PLI, production linked incentives, carbon pricing mechanisms, and subsidies. So, what do the European Union do? They have carbon pricing mechanisms, right? And a way to do balancing act and sort of how to promote net zero. Yeah. So they have carbon trade and a full-fledged market in carbon trading. And then there are subsidies. The government provides subsidies. So government will establish early stage financing and funding mechanism for CCUS projects, right? So early stage financing, the initial money you require for CCUS projects is huge, and the government has to come up and support the industry about that. The government will promote the creation of pilot plants and encourage collaboration between businesses. So, pilot plants, you have to encourage the companies so they can invest there and collaborate with other businesses. And this can be done through some kind of tax incentive, some mechanism to finance them. They're part of the project, or maybe the government helps them import technologies and develop new technologies. Many ways. So again, government can set up regulatory body. So there should be a regulatory body which can support industry to mitigate risk and to harbor technology support. So just like you call 1-800 number and a customer service from your bank is able to help you, that kind of system should be there. They have done this in many parts of the world, and it works. Having government support really helps. CCUS projects may be given preferential treatment by way of financial incentives, non-financial incentives. So financial incentives like tax incentives, non-financial incentives, maybe you don't give money-wise, but maybe you provide technology support, and you can do policy adjustments. So, okay, I am not making money at $50 per ton. Maybe the price should be at $60 per ton. So that kind of framework needs to be in place before the private business will come in and invest in this carbon footprint reduction module for the nation. Yeah. So what is needed is a proper market, and that's what the government is trying to launch, what you call a carbon credit trading scheme, CCTS. Yeah, and it would be a unified Indian carbon market where the corporations and institutions can freely exchange the the green certificates, the credits, and all that. So that would really help in starting starting to make it obligatory on the corporation to think more about environment, about the society, and governance, and it would be a win-win situation at that time. What else can be encouragement? Cluster framework is there. So what is it? It means that the government can help develop hubs, yeah, and clusters in India, which will reduce risks and costs by allowing industrial emitters to share the carbon dioxide transport and storage infrastructure. So maybe there are 10 places which are, emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. So there can be some kind of hub where all of these different corporations, emitters, they are linked through a pipeline or some kind of system by road, by train, or whatever, this carbon can be captured at the hub. Then from carbon capture hub, it goes to the transport hub. So there may be a pipeline, there can be ships, there can be trucks which will transfer this liquid carbon dioxide. And then from there, it either goes to a storage hub or to a utilization hub. So what does the storage hub do? It's way below the mud line. So you may have 3,000 feet of sea, and then below that you may have some rocks, porous rocks, where this carbon dioxide can be pumped in under high pressure, and that would be sequestration, right? And the other thing you can do is to utilize that carbon dioxide for your for uh, say fertilizers, say your enhanced oil recovery and other things, right? Okay, so what are the benefits of CCUS framework? uh, what are the benefits? So you can have a shared infrastructure, so you don't have to each infrastructure, each company doesn't have to have a transportation and storage system. Instead, there is one large transportation and storage system which all the different infrastructure or corporations use in that area. Economies of scale, you must have heard of this, that producing only say uh, 5 things versus 5,000 things. When you produce things in a large quantity, then economies of scale are in the picture. So that would lower the unit cost of individual product, right? And likewise for CO2 storage, if you have a lot of companies sharing the infrastructure, it will lower the unit cost of CO2 storage. And so you can apply the economies of scale by having that infrastructure framework in place. Then you have synergies, right? Synergy between multiple carbon dioxide sources and storage operators. So they can reduce risk and support commercial viability, right? If you're synergized, then the same problems would be faced by the same from all the storage operators. So access to large geological storage resources that can store CO2 for decades. So in the government, they have an idea of where these storages are, and they can help the corporations to decide, okay, the location, the closest to their operations, and then the CO2 can be sequestrated there. And it's a good way of attracting industries. Concentration of infrastructure in CCUS hubs can attract industries that need CCUS options for decarbonization, right? So if you are going to have a refinery which produces a lot of carbon footprint and releases a lot of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, it will find it attractive to come and set up its industry, its refinery in that shared infrastructure space, right? So, and this really promotes ESG. So, it's a win-win situation. So, DAC, we have talked about DAC, that's very useful for India and for developing countries where the cities are really polluted with bad air. So what it does is there's a large fan which draws in the air from the atmosphere, and then there's a filter which contains engineered chemicals, and they concentrate the CO2 from the air. And once that CO2 is there in the filter material is heated to release the captured CO2. Then you pump it and pressurize it into concentrated CO2. So it's in a liquid form. And then you just take it downhole and release it to in the storage area. So that's DAC principle. And there are other capture technologies. One is DAC, of course. Then you have oxy-fuel combustion. So then you have chemical solvents. These are different technical methods, guys. As a policymaker, you really need to just know about what capture is, what storage is, what kind of utilization you can do in terms of CCUS. Now, when we have been talking about storage, so there is this example of Sleipner field. based in Norway. And here we injected carbon dioxide in the well. And I have worked in this company as a petroleum engineer. So I know firsthand that this technique was used there. And CO2 is converted into high pressure liquid like form known as supercritical CO2. And then you pump it, yeah, downhole. So this is Sleipner project in Norway, guys. And you have had similar projects in Canada and Insala project in Algeria. So how can you use the CO2 for enhanced oil recovery? You see this diagram really helps it very well. You have CO2, which you collected from different industry sources. You pump it downhole to the rocks, porous rocks, and then it is pushed by the water. So water, CO2, water, CO2, and then there's a miscible zone, and then oil bank. So oil is pushed out of the reservoir and carbon dioxide is replaced there. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So this is enhanced oil recovery, guys. And then enable feasible carbon trading financial mechanism in India. So what is the government doing? We have already discussed CCTS. We have renewable energy certificates. Yeah. So if you're using solar panels, you will get energy certificates. You are using wind energy, you get um, you know energy certificate. Then you have perform, achieve, and trade scheme, a scheme that incentivizes entities that beat the mandatory energy efficiency target. So we have the ONGC headquarters in Vasant Kunj. And if I went there, that building in itself is such that it doesn't take uh, any electricity from the national grid line. It just has its own solar panel. It's so energy efficient. So, oh, it's a very nice building and it's a very good place to work if you go to that office. So these are called green buildings. And then there is this voluntary green credit program, which encourages environmentally positive activities like afforestation. So if you are growing a forest on your own, then the government will come in and award you with the voluntary green credit program advantages, right? Then you can also work on waste management and sustainable agriculture. The government has this Atal Jyoti Yojana, a scheme that may promote carbon financing, part of the CCUS policy. And so now getting it back to CCUS and ESG, when we talk about economic growth, um, it cannot be at the cost of environment. So reducing greenhouse gas emissions is very important. So there was some numbers which showed $648 billion economy benefit for the world in the first half of 2020 due to reduction in CO2 emissions. Likewise, there are food prices. There's a decline in agriculture production due to climate change is expected to lead to higher global food prices, right? And then socioeconomic factors, human development, economy and lifestyle, policy and institution, technology and environment and natural resource can be impacted by CCUS policy. All this is good for the layman citizen, right? So what are the conclusions? So the conclusion is you have ESG and CCUS are complementary, guys. You cannot talk about carbon capture, utilization, and storage without really impacting the ESG reporting and framework, right? Then you have incentive, cash tax credit, subsidy. In the Indian perspective, this is kind of very common for worldwide practices. If you look at European Union, China, or United States, all of them have this tax credit incentives, you know, applicable. Then establishing institutional framework and CCUS business model is very important for the government, and any nation which really wants to aim at net zero, you know, by any year, must start working on an institutional framework and a seeker's business model. Otherwise, how would you achieve your goals, right? And then you must support seekers technology R&D and make it specific to the local requirements. Encouragement of comprehensive seekers cluster framework, that's another thing which the government can enforce. Yeah, enable feasible carbon funding financial mechanism, and then socio-economic impacts with reduction in overall GHG emissions. So what would be the socio-economic impacts? I can tell you from my personal experiences that it will lead to reduced number of asthma and COPD cases. Like in Delhi, there is huge problem, and then people are putting filters in their houses just to take care of this um, greenhouse gas emission concern. So that's pretty much it, guys. I am done. If you have any questions, you are free to ask me now. Any questions?
Any questions, participants? Please ask.
All right.
Okay, there is no questions. So,
Yeah. Fair enough.
fair
So
enough.
you
Yeah.
all have a nice day, nice evening, and
Yes.
I give it back to Advantage now. Swapnil, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nitesh Kumar, sir. That was a truly insightful and well delivered presentation. Your deep expertise and practical knowledge have given us a fresh and impactful perspective on a future of clean energy. We sincerely appreciate the time and effort you took to share your experience with us today. On behalf of the entire team and participants, thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, dear
Yeah.
Swapnil.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye now.